Well, hi, good evening, everybody. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for coming here and braving the cold and the snow to be here at the Cowles Auditorium at the Center tonight. I'm Chris Newmarker. I'm president of the Minnesota Society of Professional Journalists. So we're holding this event because there was a little story around here, around the Twin Cities, that a news station did called Pointergate. And the society, along with the Twin Cities chapters of the National Association of Black Journalists and the Asian American Journalists Association, we released a statement expressing deep concern over the way KSTP reported the story. And since then, they not only doubled down, but they tripled down. It was very important for us to do that, because one of the core missions of SPJ is to stimulate high standards in ethical behavior. I do think we live in very interesting times because, now more than ever with the internet, with social media, it's changing the whole dynamic, and it's much harder for journalists to do stories that do not meet high standards, and kind of hide behind that. So I think it's very good that we did that. We stand behind that, but even more importantly, it's good to carry that forward and have a discussion, of that in the community, to discuss, how can we do better in the future. So, I'm very happy that we have this together tonight with a distinguished panel. Just to make a quick extra plug for the organization, if now more than ever it's important to be an SPJ member, please go to www.spj.org and click Join SPJ on the top and join. We really appreciate it. But I'm going to now introduce Jonathan Kealing, Director of Interactive Properties at Public Radio International and President-elect of our chapter this year, who will carry us forward. Thanks a lot, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, or good evening, everyone. Sorry. Welcome to the MNSPJ panel on Pointergate. What happened and where do we go from here? Our panel is co-sponsored by the Twin Cities chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, like Chris said, as well as the Twin Cities chapter of the Asian American Journalists Association, as well as the Silha Center for the Study of Media Ethics and Law, and the Minnesota Journalism Center here at the U of M. I'm joined here on the stage by panelist Duchesne Drew, Managing Editor for Operations at the Star Tribune, Anthony Newby, Executive Director of Minnesota Neighborhoods Organizing for Change, as well as in the empty chair, Jane Kirtley, the Director of the Silha Center, who was called away briefly at the last minute, but will be joining us just a little bit later. KSTP, I'd like to note here, including reporter Jay Cowles, News Director Lindsay Radford, owner Stanley Hubbard, and the station's attorneys, all declined our repeated request to join us here on the panel. However, Stanley Hubbard did write and release a 5-page letter to the Society that we'll reference several times throughout the event, because I think it's important that their perspective is heard, as is the community's and our distinguished panelists. Tonight we'll have an event in two parts. First, I'll ask our panelists a series of questions that I hope will open up the issue and give you new things to think about on this very controversial topic. Then I'll open the floor up to all of you for your questions for the panelists. But more about then. For now, I'm going to ask Duchesne and Anthony to give us very, very brief introductions of themselves and their positions in this community. Duchesne.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. So as Jonathan said, I'm the Managing Editor for Operations at the Star Tribune, and that incorporates a bunch of things, including recruitment and training and some community outreach efforts, and former chapter president for SPJ as well, locally. And I wish we were all doing something else tonight, but we're here because we have some important matters to discuss. I came to Minnesota 21 years ago, initially as a summer intern at the Star Tribune, and have made a life and a career here practicing journalism. And the story that we're going to talk about tonight, actually a couple of them because it was a follow-up, is not journalism at its best, and not KSTP at its best. And I think it's worth talking about how stories like this take on a life of their own and shape in I think bad ways discussions in the community. Maybe some good ones, because we're going to have hopefully more enlightened conversation
Anthony.
So I'm Anthony Newby. I'm the executive director of a community group called Neighborhoods Organizing for Change. We work throughout the metro area. We're a member-based organization. We work in under-resourced neighborhoods. And we work mostly in the intersection of race, the economy, and public policy. And we're also the organization from which Pointergate emerged, sprouted. And we're happy to say we played a big role in the fight back and the narrative and sort of helping to push public opinion, sway public opinion, and at least provide some context that has sparked a national conversation around race and journalism and what is the intersection of the two. And if I could just take one moment, because KSTP didn't do this in their story. Novell Gordon is here. He's a human being with a face. It was blurred out in the KSTP piece, but Novell, would you mind standing up? And, so at least everybody can know where the story originated. And again, unlike KSTP, he's here today. And we'll have to go.
I was looking forward to seeing.
But I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation and looking forward to the discussion.
Well, that's great. I'm really glad to have you. And before we jump into questions, I will just point out that this panel is being live streamed. So when we get to questions and answers, there will be microphones in the aisles. But in the meantime, we're very glad that you're here. And we also want to say hello to everyone who's watching this on the live stream because we're glad you've chosen to tune in as well. Anthony, I want to start with you because you are intimately involved in this story through your work with Novell and just through your work in the community of North Minneapolis. So, excuse me, I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about the events, the door knocking that was going on that led up to this, and then what this story has meant for your organization.
Yeah, so some background on before KSTP did the story, we were part of, this story was part of an election cycle, and part of our work is civic engagement and doing our best to engage the community, particularly communities of color, around the election and the need to participate. And as part of that, we knocked on over 55,000 doors, had 20,000 community conversations, and ultimately increased voter turnout in parts of North Minneapolis where, frankly, Novell spent the most time at the doors. So this was the context from which the story emerged. More specifically, there was some arrests of our Canvas folks that happened as part of this civic engagement effort. As is often the case in communities of color, folks are arrested for low-level offenses or, frankly, harassed oftentimes by police. So we had canvassers who were arrested in parking lots, arrested with clipboards in their hands, stopped and frisked for standing in a group of 2 or 3 or more, trying to turn out the vote, essentially. Novell, frankly, was arrested in a Cub Foods parking lot for holding a clipboard and having conversations with folks and trying to encourage them to vote. He was detained, is probably a more accurate description, and released. And the charges have since been dropped or in the process of being dropped. Thank you.
They just got dropped the other day.
Did they?
Just got dropped today because there was nothing to charge them with, frankly. So this was the sort of fabric by which the Canvas team decided to invite the mayor and the police chief into the office. And folks said, you know, they should have a firsthand look at what our folks are experiencing every day. We think they're probably allies. We should give them a chance to come to the office. And so we hosted an event where both the mayor and the chief agreed to canvass for a few hours. Novell went out with the mayor. By all accounts, they had a great time. We sent the videographer out to document it. They came back, talked and debriefed about all the good work that they did and all the folks that they met. So we were quite surprised to find out some days later that suddenly a notorious gang member, allegedly, was in a gang with the mayor. I guess we didn't have any context for how that could happen, but there was Cowles with an email to the mayor that was forwarded on to us with this allegation and the desire to do a story. So we sort of harnessed the energy and the rest became more.
Thanks, Anthony. And I should